Hello and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy podcast. My name is Jed and today we are in the Meno. So where are we in the Meno? Well, so far we are in what appears to be the demonstration section, and we have finished a dialectic that we haven't gone through and broken down to see the DDDC, def, dem, div, and conclusion, the aspects of the dialectic that we are learning and wondering if it's virtue and wondering if we can be taught it or if we have to actually do the breakdown ourselves because it can't be taught. We have to do it ourselves. We have to learn it. Is that a fundamental distinction between learning and being taught? That takes us right the way back to the first sentence. Can virtue be taught? So we should be doing that. Maybe at home or wherever, whoever is watching can break down that section. That finishes. That was to do with whether or not anyone desires bad things. Because the one that we ended up breaking down concluded with, well, Meno saying, well, there are those people who, having been led to believe that having made self, having brought it into yourself, because that's what desire means, to want it to become yourself, to have made bad things yourself actually harms you. There are those who have been led to believe that desiring bad things or making bad things yourself benefits you. And last time we asked, do you recognize those people in society who are being tricked by politicians, by religious folks, by marketing executives, being tricked or led to believe bad things benefit, or to act against their own interests, we call it. The rich convincing the poor to vote for the rich. Make the wealthy richer. I mean, I'm a working class champion. That rhetoric that's as old as time itself. Now, if that's the case, then those people who vote or subscribe or believe or follow those people don't actually desire bad things. They're not bad guys. They're not evil or enemies. They have been led to believe, and they are just the same as the other people in that they desire good things. They just haven't, keyword, recognized that it is in fact a bad thing. Okay, or recognize that desiring having a bad thing does. They do not recognize that bad things do harm. Okay, let's jump into the text and nail this part down. Do you mean to desire to come to be self? Definition? Yes. Is there anyone who is led to believe that bad things benefit the one who becomes bad? Or do they recognize that bad things harm? Meno says, there are those who have been led to believe that bad things benefit. So there are people who've been tricked, hey, this bad thing actually benefits you, according to Meno. Or do they recognize that bad things are bad when they are led to believe they're beneficial? No, you can't be both. That's where we finished. You can't simultaneously be led to believe that bad things benefit while recognizing key cognitive function, not belief, that it actually does harm. So these people do not desire bad things since they are unaware that selves are bad. They desire those things that they think are good. So it sounds like Whereas, on the other hand, they are indeed bad. So it is clear that those who are unaware that selves are bad and think that selves are good desire good things. Do you disagree? It's quite possible. So here it's changed. They're not led to believe that bad things benefit. They're led to believe that bad things are good. Meno says it's possible. What next then? As you say, those who go on desiring bad things, being led to believe that bad things harm the one that becomes bad, by recognizing without a doubt that they will be harmed by bad things. Those who go on desiring bad things are, on the one hand, being led to believe confusing here. But what do you think that those who are harmed are miserable? Being led to believe that bad things harm the one that becomes bad, by recognizing without a doubt that they will be harmed by bad things. Okay, that doesn't make sense. So, last time we did the important work of comparing the past translations of what we're reading to the Balboa translation, and we talked about how it was literally the opposite of what we're doing. But there is some benefit in that if we get caught up in the English, we have the benefit of the literal translation, but maybe that reads kind of funny, which is okay because we can jump into the past translations and read that to see if it clears anything up for us. Okay, so we are in 77E. So let's pull that up. Here we go. 77E. Do you believe, Meno, that a man knows evil? Okay, it says evil, but we know the word isn't evil. It's bad. Do you believe, Meno, that a man who knows that bad to be bad still desires it? Certainly. Do you mean by desire the possession to become self? Yes. Let's turn the light up a little bit here. And does he think that bad benefits him who gets it? Or does he know that it harms him who has it? There are those who think that evil is a benefit, and others who know that it does harm. And in your opinion, do those who think evil a benefit know that's evil? I do not think that at all. Interesting. So here is the difference. They don't actually desire the bad thing. They think what they're desiring does good because they don't recognize that it's bad. Obviously, those who are ignorant of the bad do not desire it, but only what they supposed to be good, though it is really bad. Do those who are ignorant of it and think it good? So those who are ignorant of it and think it good are really desiring the good. Is it not so? It would seem to be in their case. The case of the ignorant. Well, no. I suppose those who, as you say, desire the bad and consider that bad harms him who gets it, they know they will be harmed by it. They needs must. But do they hold that those who are harmed are miserable in proportion to the harm they suffer? Okay, so this is a new set. We've come to a conclusion. What's the conclusion? Those who are ignorant of whether or not something is good can desire bad. You're right. But really they think they are desiring the good. So let's put that on the board here. Therefore, people who desire bad things are unaware that selves are bad, but desire that which they think are good, but are actually bad. Oh, there's our conclusion. Neat. Let's keep reading. Okay, do they think that they are harmed? Those who think that those are harmed are miserable to the degree that they're harmed. So he's adding another element to it. Part of being harmed is being miserable. And bad daemon. So that can be mean-spirited, or you'll be like a bad daemon. That's fundamental because, as we've been talking about, the daemon, the voice of the self that communicates to Socrates in all sorts of ways that he talked about in his trial. We have an inner voice communicating with us, but we also have a usually louder voice communicating the negative, what we understand to be the pathologos, what some people call the inner critic, the thing that communicates the implications of the false idea of the self. So one of the things we're recognizing is when we say bad things, the word is altos. It doesn't necessarily mean bad things. The higher version is, of course, the being, but even beyond that, the word altos means self. Well, that's literally what it means. So this is key because the daemon can be understood as the voice of the self, as well as our personal guide. There are lots of aspects to the daemon, but here we can see that people can be motivated by the bad self. What they think is the good self, but is the kaka, the bad self. What does that mean? How can there be a bad self? I thought self was the ultimate, the highest good. In fact, it's called the one self or the good self. What on earth is this bad self? That's what we have been learning in philosophical midwifery, the pathologos. So if we're following the logos, which is the self logos, that word has come up. That's the dialectic, the structure and application of the self logos. There is also its shadow, the pathologos, the false belief about ourselves we unknowingly carry that causes our problems and is kept alive by what we call the inner critic sometimes, but the negative daemon, the kako daemon in the Greek, daemonos. Interesting. Now, if you follow bad advice from a bad friend, wouldn't that harm you? Yes. And if you are harmed, wouldn't you become miserable? Yes. And if you become miserable and harmed, won't you act like a miserable jerk? Yes. And by the way, if you are listening to a negative voice that's treating you negatively, making you miserable, are you likely to project that? And the specific way you are a jerk to others might be the exact same way that kaka daemon is being a jerk to you. In other words, hurt people, the cycle or the self-fulfilling prophecy aspect of our pathologos. In other words, if people do not address their own injustices that they suffered and carry with them, thumbs up, they will do it to others. So the time of recording, yesterday, we looked at the we were reading Philosophical Midwifery, and we came to a new definition of what it means to be mature. One of the aspects is having the courage and commitment to discover your own pathologos and stay with it until you actually go back to those first teachers, your parents and your family, and use your understanding and that you've gained through your learning to properly and successfully address your pathologos. That's maturity. And immaturity would therefore be a cowardice, a lack of commitment, a giving up, a blind loyalty to the false beliefs you grew up in, which would cause you to not only be miserable yourself, but to act unjustly to others. Hurt people, that idea. So you have your job here, and to do your job maturely and rationally is to address your problems, because if you don't, not only will you be harming yourself, you'll be harming others, which is wrong, unjust. So maturity is having the understanding of that. So that was one of the key terms, understanding, as opposed to beliefs. Courage, because this won't feel right until it does. Your feelings will be a reflection of the beliefs that you've been living out your entire life. But courage isn't going with your feelings, it's going with understanding. Of course, once you fully address the bad daemon, the negative self-voice that puts you down, your feelings will change because you will be free from what's false. But nevertheless, until you get to that stage, it requires courage and a commitment to go all the way. Some people give up. Oh, okay, I've removed some aspects of my block. Now I can do this thing I was never able to do and this thing I was never able to do. That's it for me. Well, hang on a second. You're still carrying your daemon. You're still carrying your pathologos. It may not come up as often, but it will come up. You will still be a big, mean-spirited jerk. I don't care. I'm out of here. That, my friend, is immature. By the definition that we came to. And that's happened a lot in midwifery. So, those watching, stay with it. Even when you face hurdles, stay with it. That's maturity. So that's what we're seeing here as well. So we will become miserable and like that negative daemon if we desire the bad self. Now, self can mean things in the physical world. It can mean aspects of being in the metaphysical world. And it can mean the one self or the good self, which is higher even than the enlightenment experience of reality. Now, an aspect of reality we've already defined is virtue. One of the first definitions we've been given for virtue by Socrates is it's an eidos, an aspect of being. That's why we can call it self-virtue. That's why we can have a definition of it. It's not many in our physical world. It's not something you point to, that over there, that over there. I like that quote. I like harming that person. I like being friends to that person. That's virtue. No. That's not a definition. That's a swarm of bees, Socrates has called it in this text. We want a definition, which means it has to exist in being. So, self-virtue. So this is key. Those that are harmed by desiring a bad self out of their ignorance, and we can also add immaturity to reflect on it, especially once they've heard that there is such a thing as logos and pathologos. And if you're watching, now you know. That's immaturity. And is there anyone who wishes to be miserable and mean-spirited? Is anyone who wishes to be miserable and to do unto others the harm they suffered? The kakadaemon. So that's our next level. And we could also say, oh, by the way, that's miserable and function negatively, to be a mean-spirited jerk, to be the bad daemon. That's immaturity. From what we read. Isn't it neat that what we read in midwifery helps our reading of philosophy and vice versa? So let's put that on the board. We can draw a line under this. So we've got a definition. Those who desire bad things recognize without a doubt they'll be harmed. Okay, so let's start here. Do you think those who are harmed are miserable to the degree that they are harmed? Those harmed are miserable and mean-spirited. People who are harmed become miserable and mean-spirited. And we also recognize that's the bad daemon. Not only are they a mean-spirited jerk, they are being a negative daemon, projecting their own problems onto others and keeping the cycle of injustice going. So one of the questions that we had in reading one of the opening questions of the philosophical midwifery book is, how come we are so immature and irrational when it comes to ourselves? Remember Pierre Grimes walking along the road defending us from the Nazis? He stopped and realized, well, this is the exact same road the ancient Romans walked to defend themselves against the barbarians. It's almost as though, well, it is as though we haven't learned anything. Europe is sick because they're not learning from their problems. Now that's the pathologos. Why can't we learn? In other words, why can't we understand and remove our problems? Another way of phrasing that is, how come we can't understand and learn virtue? Why are we not unlearning our bad behavior as a human race? And why are we not learning good behavior? That's what we're learning here. Can virtue be taught? Now, of course, one aspect of virtue would include unlearning bad behavior. So the two really go together. Why are we not learning good things? The bad daemon. Why are we playing out our bad daemon? Okay, so next stage. Accordingly then, anyone who wishes for bad things it is not the case that anyone wishes for bad things, otherwise they would wish to be in that condition. For what else is it to be miserable than to desire bad things and to have procure, own them, to make them yourself? So therefore, no one wishes for bad things. Now let's see if it's the same word as desire. Wishes, 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 wishes. Because we've defined the word desire. I'm just checking the Greek to see, I mean, you can see it too. What do you mean to desire? So there's the Greek word here, desire, which is the same here. And now we have the word wishes here. So just for accuracy's sake, let's nail down what this word desire is in the Greek. Epithemin. And epithemin means to set one's heart on a thing, desire. All right, that's epithemin. So let's highlight it. This no. Where's my highlight button? No. Okay, I thought I had a highlight shortcut, but maybe I don't. So I'm adding a note to desire. The other word is wishes. Again, an example of every word being significant. Because otherwise we can ask the question, why is it not working? Why is it different? So desire is epithemin and voyeste is to will or wish. All right, so will and wish work there. So desire and wish fit. Now, this is key because a difference in word might be significant. It might open up a new insight for us, but it will at least open up a new question. So what's the question? Why the change from desire to wish? We can wonder about it. Now, we started by saying that people desire bad things, or do people desire bad things? And we said only those who have been tricked through belief. Either to believe that the bad thing is actually good, or to believe that bad things benefit. But here we're seeing, hang on a second. Do we understand that bad things don't actually benefit? They just make us, they harm us and make us miserable and mean-spirited. So in that case, nobody wishes for bad things. So wishes, the difference between wishing for bad things and desiring bad things, you may still desire a bad thing subconsciously because you haven't recognized you have been tricked. That's marketing. That's, right-wingism, fascism, capitalism. You've been tricked to think, capitalism will make everyone rich. All we got to do is give all the money to the rich people. And they get richer and richer and richer. We get poorer and poorer and poorer. and they destroy the planet and have 84 yachts. That's not actually going to harm us. That will make us miserable and mean-spirited. So people might desire it. People might subconsciously desire bad things while consciously wishing for good things. So that could be a difference. I don't know. It's a question. What's the difference between a desire and a wish? Is one conscious? Okay. So therefore, no one wishes for bad things unless they wish to be in that condition. Or bad. Now, selves, we're going to say, because selves means thing and beings and the self. Unless they wish to be in that condition. Hey, maybe that can be a thing. Some people might, no, that's hard to say. I was going to say some people might still desire to imitate their pathologos models, but they would only do so because they still think there's something good about it, because of the false image of greatness and beauty and justice they haven't yet addressed. So no one wants to be miserable or be a jerk. So there's a conclusion by Meno. Probably true. Okay, again, not good enough, but we'll take it. No one wishes for bad things. So let's put it in there because Meno, no one, it's a kind of conclusion or a synthesis. No one wishes for bad things. So that's a kind of conclusion. So we could see this stage here as division, dividing it out. Okay, so we'll start with a definition. What was that first? Okay, recognize without a doubt they'll be harmed by bad things. Let's write that in. Unless you're being really duped in some way, we start off with the definition. So let's put that. Recognize we are harmed. We are harmed by bad cells or things. Things if you're a basic B. Okay, so what? Well, so now we have what we need to look for a structure. That's what we do. That's philosophy. What's the exercise of philosophy? A dialectic. What are we learning? The logos. Okay, so we could say, is this definition? Oh, is this starting definition? Now, within a greater dialectic, of course, because we did a dialectic here. Desires come to be selves. Okay. So, definition that we're starting with here, harmed by bad things. Or is that a demonstration? Maybe let's stick with definition. Those that are harmed become miserable and mean-spirited. That's how it would function. Is that a demonstration? Therefore, no one wishes for bad selves unless they wish to be harmed by that condition. See, that even sounds like a division. Because this seems like the implications that follow. By the way, yeah, see, I even think this might be demonstration here. What is the functioning of wanting bad things? You are harmed. How does that divide up? Divides up. So division is where we see the arguments, see it unfold into divisions. Well, you're harmed. If you're harmed, you become miserable and mean-spirited. And no one wishes to be for those bad selves unless they wish, therefore, no one wishes to be for bad selves unless they wish to be in that condition. So where's the conclusion coming in? Conclusion? Synthesis? Therefore, no one wishes for bad things. Okay, I can't see it yet. Maybe you can. Maybe you can. And if you do, share it with the chat. Join our Discord. Share your work in the Discord. Get thumbs up from us. Share the quest. Philosophy is not a one-person game. Okay. Meno, no one wishes for bad things. Okay, Meno's being improved, isn't he? How can you harm the bad guys if no one actually wishes for bad things? You're taking away the evil. And by the way, any war that's ever started, the invading force does that. They will dehumanize the people they are trying to be disgusting towards, unjust towards, harm, to be bad towards, usually for, as we saw in the Phaedo, Socrates says, yeah, if people don't realize that what we here is to experience, understand, and function through the realm of being, they'll be a slave to their physical senses, their physical desires. That's where wars come from. People looking for stuff to meet their physical desires. And so that's what motivates the people starting wars. And then they have to trick people to act violently towards themselves, other human beings. And so they'll take a group and they'll divide it off and say, those people are not human. Why? They have to make the case that these people are, you can treat them inhumanly because they are bad, because they desire bad things. They are evil. They are savages. They are vermin. You name it, that's the first thing that's done. You get a nickname given to the team you want to be violent towards, and you tell your troops to see them through that lens. But what we're seeing, and that's what Meno thought. Meno thought virtue, the excellence of our soul, is doing bad things to our enemies. But now he's come to a conclusion, and so we, that no one actually wishes for bad things. They may have been tricked through belief, but no one would want to become miserable and a mean-spirited jerk. So, what you're saying just now is that virtue or excellence is to wish for good things and to be able. So we're bringing it back to the definition. That sounds like the analysis step. Yes, I did say so. So, this is saying that the wishing belongs to all of us, wishing for good things. And in this way, no one is better than another. So here's our analysis, which is bring it back to the start. So, we can say, bring it back to the definition, which is other back to self in the way that we understand the four parts of the dialectic. And the definition was to wish for good things and to be able. To wish for what makes you good? Well, I wish for good things and I'm able to get them. What makes someone bad? Or they're the evil ones. They wish for bad things, just like the devil. The devil. They wish for bad things, don't they? Let's do a crusades. Wish for Now I say, oh, by the way, that's the Crusades. Didn't happen that long ago, historically speaking. It's happening right now. Right now, there are people who haven't gone through this simple dialogue with someone like Socrates to understand that no one actually wishes for bad things, because they recognize that having a bad thing will harm you, and being harmed makes you miserable and a mean-spirited jerk. Unless they want that, which no one does, they don't actually want bad things. So to say I'm better than those people I'm invading or genociding because I wish for good things and they wish for bad things is a false belief. Someone has convinced them about a false belief. So those people doing genocide, who we could say, well, they're evil, look at them, look how evil they are. Well, hang on a second. Isn't that the same game that they're playing on the people they're genociding, calling them evil? It is. So what? Are we going to perpetuate the cycle of violence, or realize that even these genociders, even these invading people are wishing for good things too? They have just been tricked by a belief. Right? Isn't that what they think? Oh, the Palestinians are Muslims. We don't like Muslims. We don't agree with their beliefs. So how do you fix a belief? You shoot them in the face and you kill their family and you blow up their houses? That's how you solve a belief. Nope, that's physical. Beliefs are not physical. That's a lie. Well, how do you fix a belief? Because everyone is the same, because we wish for good things. The difference is our beliefs about what's good. So how do you fix beliefs? That's literally what we're reading. One of the greatest human beings, a gift to humanity, Socrates, is demonstrating for us a process that may potentially change someone's beliefs. Meno represents the common way of thinking. So one of our questions is, does it work? Can Socrates help Meno change his mind? Or can virtue not be taught? So again, the key puzzle. So to wish for good things and be able is our definition of excellence. So you could say, well, I wish to be an excellent basketball player, but I don't have the physical abilities. I'm too short. I'm too uncoordinated. I am too unfit. So you don't have the excellence of the basketball player. You might have all your understanding, but you're not able. So become a coach. Now, of course, same thing for being a coach. You have to have a good idea and wish to be a good coach, but that's common to everyone. Are you able to put it into action? Definition, demonstration. Even in virtue, it's the dialectic again. Isn't that interesting? What do we say? It's turtles all the way down, dialectics all the way down. So that's our definition. To wish for good things and be able. But our conclusion was, because no one wishes to be miserable and a mean-spirited jerk, the wishing part belongs to all of us. And in this way, no one's better than another. Then it is clear that if people are better, and of course there are people who are better, not everyone's identical, especially in their character, then it would be according to their ability, very much so. So, conclusion. So we've realized that this part belongs to all of us. For all. So therefore, so it belongs to all, and therefore, three dots like that means therefore, no one is better. No. Yes. Better than another. In this way. Or virtue. Or excellence. Therefore, it's in the be able. Therefore, one is better according to their ability. To their ability. Now, it seems like that ability would be also have to include the ability to discern false beliefs from true understanding, considering people who do bad things or desire bad things or wish bad things have been led through belief, not by recognition and understanding, to think the bad things are good. So this ability should, we haven't read it yet, but we can anticipate, hopefully this is what we will see in the text. If not, we'll have to write a nasty email to the editor or Socrates as manager and say, hey, he missed a part. The ability to discern false beliefs from true understanding. Or maybe it's left out on purpose because it should be obvious to anyone reading with this level of integrity or virtue or excellence. In other words, maybe he's not telling us what it is, he's giving us the conditions to learn it. In which case we could ask, is that a high way of functioning? If he just said, oh, by the way, this is what virtue is, would it stay a belief? And you either already believe it and you're going to nod and go, oh yeah, I know that. Or you're going to reject it. Socrates is dumb. We've learned so much in 2,000 years. He didn't even have the internet. Don't you know about evolution? Evolution means the later you are born, the wiser you are. That's why my batty grandma is wiser than Socrates. So you either believe it or you don't, and you're going to dismiss what you don't believe. But if he's giving us the conditions to go from belief to understanding, is that a higher way of functioning? In which case, is he more excellent than Gorgias, who taught Meno? So, that's where we are. No one is better in that they desire bad things. It's their ability to procure. And by procure it, I mean make it become self, which can be lots of levels, of course. Your ego, your Facebook profile, your job, the things that you identify with physically, or your soul, or your being. Do you actually desire beauty itself, goodness itself, that is eternal? The noun that makes beautiful things beautiful. Are you a philosopher? Are you seeking being? Or even the self that's beyond even that? You, the real you. Not physical, not even mind, but that which has mind. Or do you listen to the Kakadaemon? Do you listen to the Kakadaemon that says yourself is less than that? Inadequate in some way. Alright. By the way, according to this, you don't desire to listen to that Kakadaemon. You've just been tricked to think that that kind of pathologos, sick language, sick way of treating someone, sick dialectic, you've been tricked through belief and imitation that it's actually good. It actually does know you. It's good. It's excellent. It actually is wise. So when it puts you down, it's right. That's why we believe it. If you imagined like a 4-year-old with a lollipop jammed up their nose, walking up to you and said, "You're an alien," you wouldn't freak out and have an existential crisis because you don't believe that person is good and wise and true. Just a little kid. So why do we believe the Kakadaemon within ourselves? That puts us down, sabotages us, keeps us chained to fate, repeating cycles of failure. There must be something in us that has been led to believe it's good when it ain't. So how do we undo that miseducation or mislearning? Philosophical midwifery, that's the other series on the channel. We seem to pluck it every week because it seems to come up because it's the other half of what we're doing, isn't it? So follow along on YouTube, check out that series. And yeah, no extra charge. How about that? Unlike Gorgias, who I expect charged Meno a hefty sum for his teaching. So accordingly then, according to the logos, or your logos, the self logos, it's an interesting question. But logos is key, of course. That's what we're after. That's the tick, that's the path. That's the path home. That's the quest. That's the spiritual quest. That's the quest of all understanding. That's what dialectic is a paradigm of. It's the logos. Okay, that's why my band is called Logos Bridge. Thumbs up. By this logos, virtue or excellence is this. So a new definition. The power of being able, and we've looked this up. Power means the ability. So power isn't as accurate as the ability, the skill, the power, the capacity, or the faculty. So pick what one suits you there. I like skill, ability. I like ability because ability requires skill and power and capacity and faculty. So the ability to be able, but maybe not ability to be able, the skill to be able, the capacity to be able to provide good things, and the word is not well, that's just good. And we did look up provide, but I don't see a note here, so let's look up provide again. So I don't think the word is provide, but that's the thing. Unlike learning philosophy 10 years ago, not only do we have an actual text with actual translation that hasn't been in our culture for 1500 years. That's mind-blowing. That's huge. Don't take it personally, especially if you're like Meno and you spend a lot of money on your teacher. Take this opportunity to grow, change your mind like Meno might. And yeah, I paid money too for miseducation about philosophy. The point is, we haven't been learning philosophy. It hasn't been philosophy. At least not from Socrates or Plato or the Platonics. It hasn't been about the logos. It's been what Socrates calls philodoxia, love of opinions. So what? Well, so now, in the last decade, we've got a translation, thanks to the Balboas. And we have the ancient Greek, and we have the internet, which allows us, so we don't even have to believe even a fantastic translator like one Balboa. We can literally recognize it for ourselves. Isn't that cool? We're doing the thing we're reading. Isn't that neat? So we jump to the internet. See? Internet lives in space. We go to this one, which is snibble.org, which is a symbol font to Unicode converter. So we can translate the symbol font into ancient Greek for no extra charge than your internet service. You don't have to be part of the wealthy elite like you had to be up until the last 100 years ago to actually be able to afford this kind of education or have special access to the texts. Isn't that amazing? We're really on experiencing a turning point in culture. Education isn't being gatekept. The thing about it no longer being gatekept is that bottleneck of gatekeeping. You got to be rich, you got to have free time, you got to have special access to these ancient Greek encyclopedias. You got to be really, really lucky to have a half decent translation, which we literally haven't had. But the thing about that bottleneck is very easy to stick a gatekeeper right there. You don't read it, you believe what I tell you. What's that called? Being a professor, one who professes the faith. Our education system, with that gatekeeper who has the secret knowledge, is modeled after our religious system, where there is a preacher preaching, or priest who is closer to God than you unwashed masses, who speaks for God. Literally, turn on the TV, the old TV channels at 3 a.m. I know this because it's played in my gym whenever I go to the gym early morning. There is a preacher claiming to be an expert, reinterpreting the Bible to suit his needs, which is usually to justify capitalism, justify him in particular having a $1 billion golden jet for some reason. Cherry picking, what we call today clip chimping. Selectively picking out things out of context to prove what he has already been led to believe. Working as a gatekeeper from people actually reading the text. If they did, they would come to some amazing surprises, which we're not going to get into now, but there are lots. Like, just read Genesis. Read the ancient Greek of Genesis if you can, or an accurate translation. More accurate is, I think, the New England. No. Yeah, I think New England is one of the more accurate, but get one with the ancient Greek. Have a look at that. Read the opening paragraph of John. Anyway, rabbit hole we're not going to go down to. The point is, no one actually reads the text. They go through a bottleneck, a gatekeeper, which we don't have anymore. We are blessed to have a actually good translation, but even our great translator, we don't have to be led to believe like what we're reading. So, isn't that cool? Yes. So what's the word? Paste. Porisiste. We even have a AI helper who says the word for us. I don't know if you can hear it on the camera. Polisiste, she's saying. So what does polisiste mean? We can put it in Wiktionary. So that's just the Google Translate, so I can hear what it sounds like. And then we can go to Wiktionary, and we can also go to Perseus, which has on the perseus.edu website, it has a ancient Greek dictionary, which is fantastic. It has many dictionaries in one. So again, we don't have to even pay for a library membership at some ancient Greek university, because we have this. The word is porisiste, and it means bring about, provide, bring, provide. So I've got the other dictionary. Supply, cause, provide, bring about. Let's see it here. Okay. So I'm copying the root and putting it into Wiktionary. Doesn't help us. Let's try this one. To give. What? To give a drink. No. That's not right. Holy this day. A loincloth. No, it's not a loincloth. Worn around the waist. To provide, supply, procure. To bring about. Bring about. Okay, so let's use that. Oh, provide. Okay, there we go. So provide was one of the definitions, and that's probably what our translator got, where he got his. We're not allowed to have a note. Okay. Bring about. Provide. Cause. Procure. Now, I like this because bringing about and procuring doesn't mean you're doing it for someone else. Providing kind of sounds like you're doing it for someone else, which would be virtuous, of course. The virtue of a doctor is to provide health, not for himself, but for his patient. So, the power or the skill or capacity to bring about good. And the word is just good, not things. So, if everyone actually desires the good, you can't say that some people are more excellent than others because they desire good things and can bring it about. Really, what makes people better than others is the ability or the capacity, or let's just say the ability, the capacity, the power to be able, or the ability to bring about good. The ability to bring about good, or the capacity to cause or provide good. Now, good is one of those words like altos, which has the three dimensions or three levels of meaning. Good things, eat a good sandwich, or to provide a good sandwich is better, is a more excellent chef than to provide a bad sandwich. Good ideas, aspects of being, to be able to experience directly the justice itself, goodness itself. Beauty itself is much better than those people who have false ideas of justice, false ideas of beauty, false ideas of the divine. And of course, to be able to provide, to be able to procure, to be able to bring about the good self. So the one self is the first hypothesis of Parmenides, but in the Republic, he also talks about what's beyond even reality is the good self. Formerly translated as good itself, which again, the word it isn't very great, but good itself means the good self. So that's the higher level, higher dimension. That's our destiny. That's what we want to reach. Know thyself is the axiom that the ancient Greeks followed. This is the thyself we're seeking. So the ability to bring about the good. That's what makes people different or more excellent than others. So there's our conclusion. So let's put it on the board. No one is better. One is better by their ability to. Therefore, whoops, where's my, here we go. Their ability to. The power to cause, or their ability to bring about good. So a new definition, which sounds like the conclusion or the analysis step of the dialectic. Isn't that neat? One is better or more excellent according to their ability to bring about good. Ability, skill, capacity. So let's write underneath ability, skill, capacity to bring about, procure, provide good. So, neat. Let's keep reading. Meno replies, "It appears to me it has to be exactly in this way, O Socrates, as you now understand it." Who understands it? As and surely, says Socrates, then let us see if this that you say is true, okay? So one of the ways that people can block themselves from learning is blocking themselves from conclusions. Have you been in a conversation where you've gone through the steps together in mutual agreement, through mutual understanding, seeing and recognizing? And then when you get to the conclusion, they'll say, that's yours. That's an interesting conclusion you came to. Now in midwifery, we recognize that as a block to conclusion. If you can't conclude, how can you go further? It's a way of keeping you stuck and stagnant. So, Meno might be trying that on for size. Interesting conclusion you came to, Socrates. And Socrates turns around and goes, well, actually, let's see if what you say is true. For perhaps you may have spoken well. You say that to be able to provide good things is virtue. So now we have a conclusion, we are reflecting on it. Let's see how legitimate it is. I do indeed. Okay, Meno's on board. Good. Then, do you not call good things such things as health and wealth? So that sounds like a division, or maybe a demonstration. This sounds like a definition here, doesn't it? What? Okay. This sounds like a definition. Cool. Health and wealth, are they good things? And I include the acquisition of gold and silver. Meno. Meno. Come on, Meno. Whoa. Fixing my lighting. Okay, I'm gonna have to go to the super bright one. Because it makes me look like a super white. I don't like that. I like looking a little bit more tanned, but anyway, at least you can see my face. The other one's a bit dark. Okay, so what does Meno want? He wants gold and silver. All right, there you go. Now, from our reading of the Phaedo, we can already recognize that is love of soggy tomatoes. Wait. No, love of soggy tomatoes, philosomatos, is love of the body. So what we were talking about earlier, what motivates wars? Love of the body. Okay, how does love of soggy tomatoes manifest? Philosomatos, love of cremated tomatoes. Gold and silver, love of wealth. Philokrimatos. That's the fancy word. Why are we using the fancy words? Because it's important to distinguish where philosophy lies. We've already said the way that philosophy is taught, led to believe the bad is good, is actually what Socrates calls philodoxia, the love of opinions. Anyone who thinks that philosophy is a manyness, Kant's philosophy, Hegel's philosophy, Brand's philosophy, Scanlon, Scruton, Burke, Kant's philosophy, Flicht. What has it got to do with Bob's Burgers? Right? That's philodoxia. Same root or same category as philosophy, in that it's philos something, love of something. It's something that motivates. We are motivated by love. It's a kind of desire. This is what's talked about in the symposium. And what we are seeing, it's a desire to make the self. So what motivates us? Is it a love of the body? Was it a love of opinions, like the way philosophy is taught at present? Hopefully not for much longer. The more we can have fun learning truth, learning the logos. Is it love of the body? Philosomatos. That manifests as one of two things. Love of wealth, gold and silver, philokrimatos, or philotimos, love of honors and offices. That's honor. You might recognize, for those familiar with the Republic, the Timocratic soul, love of honor. So, philodoxia, love of opinions. Somatos, love of the body. No, don't stay there. If you get stuck there, what do you end up doing? Living a life loving riches in your capitalist mindset, which is philokrimatos, or love of honor. You want to get Instagram famous. You want to get all the likes or whatever. Or want to be a politician, have high office, get that respect, yo. I don't know. That wasn't a thing. I shouldn't have said that. That sounded dumb. Love of honor, philotimos. So, in the Phaedo, Socrates makes it clear, and you can check out the Phaedo on our channel, that love of riches and love of honor, philokrimatos and philotimos, is below love of learning. So you can look at the aspects of the soul: our desire, our outward moving part, and our reasoning part. So when we talk about virtue in the Republic, we talk about having a snowman well arranged with the smallest part leading. Our reasoning part, which is called the Logos, by the way. To be led by the Logos is to be a well-ordered soul. Now, what does that lead to? Love of learning. Philomathesis. That's what we're doing. We're learning here. Learning involves repetition. So we do this podcast every day if we can. Repetition. Did I just say that? Yeah. Review. Talking with your friends about it. Over coffee. Hey, let's meet for coffee. Why? So I can tell you what I learned. Why? Oh, that's philomathesis. That's love of learning. You have to repeat it with your friends. Philosophy isn't a one-person game. All right, so what does philomathesis lead into? Philomathesis leads into philosophy. Now we've reached philosophy. Philosophy is a stage on a ladder of development. After you've been reading. Just because you're reading this text doesn't mean you're a philosopher. You're a philomathesis. Philomathesi? You're a philomathesi. So what's the exercise and study that changes philomathesis, love of learning, into philosophia? That's the dialectic. The exercise and study of philosophy is the dialectic. Said in black and white in the text, that we have only been able to read in the last 10 years for several reasons that we've covered. Number one, the lecturers or professors professing the faith don't tell you it. Maybe they're ignorant, maybe they're gatekeeping, maybe they like their paychecks. Whatever reason, they just don't happen to be telling us. Number two reason, usually when you study it, you don't read the text yourself. You read an interpreter of the text, which is a weird way of reading, but that's the way it is right now. Another reason is we haven't had a good translation. We haven't had the Balboa translation. Another reason is we haven't had the ancient Greek underneath the translation. Sometimes we have it to the side, but that's kind of hard to read. And we haven't had the internet where you can go through the stages we've gone through. So lots of reasons why we haven't been doing philosophy, but we can now. So good for us. Which is why we have this channel, to awaken philosophy. Hooray. So when we do that, we can realize, oh, what's the exercise of philosophy? The dialect. What does it come after? Learning, repetition. So how are we reading? We're doing both. We're getting 2 ice creams with 1 cone. Is that a metaphor? I don't like the kill 2 birds with 1 stone metaphor, because why would you want to kill birds? Birds are amazing and beautiful and sing beautifully. So it's you hatch 2 birds with 1 egg. I don't know. We're doing 2 things at once. We're repeating, we're reviewing, we're doing this every day if we can. We have a community in Discord, we have comment section in YouTube, and you can join on Twitch and comment on Twitch as well and join it in live time. So that's the philomathesis, and we are doing our best to structure every single part if we can, and the whole, according to the dialectic. That's philosophy. That's philosophy. It's not quoting people you like that support your personal beliefs. Like Meno does. How does Meno try and use? Hey, I've given you the paradigm of the dialectic, says Socrates, the top of page 11. Can you use it? Does he use it? Nope. He quotes a poet he likes. Right? Just like philosophers. Well, Kant said, well, Hegel said, well, I like when C.S. Lewis said. That's not philosophy. At best, that's philodoxia. Quoting opinions that you already agree with. And if you don't also recognize that there is a self-being, another dimension that's causal of the physical dimension, that's eternal and immortal and knowable, you won't be able to get to definitions. You'll be stuck in the level of opinions. But also, you'll probably use your ability to quote opinions to serve your body. Philosomatos. Your body's just a soggy tomato. And if you're serving the body and not the soul, which is experiences the realm of being, you're probably going to be, whether you like it or not, using your quoting. You'll be quoting your big words and your poets that you like, or modern philosophers that agree with your opinions too. Philosomatos. Seek philokrimatos, wealth, gold and silver, or philotimos, love of honor and offices. Get that tenureship. Get that psychology office, whatever. Interesting? Neat that we can understand it. Neat that we can make sense of a lot of the difficulties and frustrations we've seen in the world. Yeah. Are you a Meno? Do you have tenureship doing this? What's your reaction going to be? Anger? Or are you going to learn and change your mind? Are you going to defend your previously held beliefs, which we have defined as immaturity in yesterday's midwifery reading? Or are you going to have courage and commitment to follow understanding, to learn new things, to challenge your false beliefs, gain new understanding, and become mature and rational in a way that humanity hasn't been doing up till now. Except for Socrates, perhaps. Let's keep reading. So, good things, health and wealth, yes, and gold, and getting money and having honors in the city and offices. Socrates, do you mean the good things, by good things, nothing else than these kinds of things? I mean nothing else than all those such as these. All right? We can already see Socrates already pointed out the tragedy of his education, the comedic tragedy of his education is he hasn't been initiated. He doesn't know about the realm of being. He hasn't been there, hasn't looked around. So physical things, philokrimiatos. You can't imagine a good beyond this physical world. Do you know people like that? Virtue is physical, nothing to do with experiencing the realm of being, nothing to do with understanding it with the dialectic. Nothing to do with going into it in greater depth to recognize the cause of reality. Nothing to do with using your understanding and experience to wonder even about that, to go beyond even the experience of being. Nothing about that, but just how to get rich and famous. How many of those people have you seen? Nothing other than these. Nothing else than all such as these. Is what he thinks is good things. Very well, says Socrates. We would say, Socrates says very well. Surely then, to provide gold and silver is virtue, as Meno says. The paternal guest friends of the great king. What the hell does that mean? To provide gold and silver is virtue, as Meno says. We're right here. Who is the paternal guest friend of the great king? Do you add to this providing, O Meno, in a just and pious way? Or does it make no difference to you, even if someone provides selves unjustly and still calls selves excellence in the same way? So to get money is virtue, says Meno, but you're going to add to get it with justice and piety? Now, piety is an interesting word. It isn't defined. It's included in the virtues in several texts, but it's not outlined in a specific way. I think it's addressed in, I think it's the Gorgias. I'm not sure. You can correct me below in the comment section. The text where he, actually, let's nail it down. All right, so Euthyphro, just done a bit of research. Euthyphro is the text where Socrates meets Euthyphro on the front stairs of the courtroom, and he claims to know what is piety, what is holiness, and it's what the gods like. And that is a whole discussion Socrates has with him about what is holiness. And holiness is counted among the virtues in other places. But it isn't defined as one of the 4 or 5 virtues. So it's kind of a catch-all virtue, or maybe it's a baby virtue, in that you should want what the gods want to even begin the quest of virtue. Hey, don't you want to be better? Don't you want to be like the daemons or the gods or the divine? Don't you want to be holy? In which case, learn the virtues. So it could be a start of virtue. Maybe you have a better understanding. Share it with us in the comments, in the Discord, in the chat. Nevertheless, he is pulling this one out to say, hey, justice and holiness, add to this. Justice. Don't you want to seek your money in a just way? In a holy way? Or can you get things unjustly? which can lead into the question that we can wonder about. Would you bring about a completely just society if it cost the lives of 1 million innocent people? That's the question that should be asked the Israelis right now. Can you, even if you could, which you're not going to, of course, bring about a perfectly just world if it costed the extermination of 1 million Palestinian people? Would you do it? Well, their answer is yeah. Doing it right now. What about 10 people? What about the single tear? A single tear from an innocent child? It's an interesting question to wonder about. Is it true justice if it's brought about unjustly? Now, it's a good question because we can ask it right here. Hey, if Meno is a brute, if he thinks justice is actually hurting people, so long as they're the enemies, so long as you call them the bad guys, and he's rich and he's powerful and so on, and he wants to get money and have honor, so if he does get in any honor and offices in the city, he's probably going to start some wars because that's what motivates war. War is motivated by getting stuff to meet your physical needs. You can't war your way into being. Literally, you won't be allowed up, as far as the way I understand it. In the Phaedo, you have to do what is just until the divine selves invite you up. Open the gates. Just as in the start of the Phaedo, his friends are hanging out, discussing philosophy, talking about Socrates, reviewing their conversations until the guards let him in to see Socrates. No, that's just a hypothesis that we're carrying. But maybe, wouldn't it make sense? In which case you can't brute force your way in. Let me into the divine realm where the philosophers are having the greater philosophical conversation, unbound by physical distractions or needs, and maybe even unbound by pathologos that can sabotage the logos. Let me in or else I'll shoot this puppy. Brrr! Quiet you. I need to get to justice, where justice is, and I'll shoot you if it takes that. Brrr! And the dog saying, it's not justice if you get there unjustly. And you'll say, quite right, dog. You are a wise dog. That is why I love you. And then the dog goes, oh, I love you too. And you kiss the dog on the nose. Good dog. And you put him down. That's exactly what happens. So, if you think that having money... So, if Meno is such a person, likely to go to war, how are we going to help him learn a more just virtue of excellence? A more just understanding of virtue and excellence. We might save lots of lives if we abuse him into, hey, dummy, you want to harm your enemies? That's stupid. That makes you an enemy. Well, I'm going to harm you. I'm going to punch you in the nose. Is that going to be good? Is that going to be just and pious? Even if it might potentially save the lives of all the people he's going to harm, seeking gold and silver, because of his ignorance, because he's been led to believe this false belief about what is good and just and virtue? Or is Socrates not punching him in the nose, but doing something else? In other words, is Socrates bringing him to justice and virtue in a just and virtuous way? Good question. Ask it of ourselves. If we seek our highest excellence, are we doing it by punishing ourselves? Do we beat ourselves up? You better do that thing or else, no, oh, I'm going to make you miserable. Do we talk to ourselves that way? Do we talk to our children that way? Do as I say or else, detention or timeout or no cookies for you. Is that how we want to bring about justice? Through violence, through injustice, through threats, through fear? By the way, does it work? What happens when you're not in the room? If their only idea of doing good things is because of the consequences that they will have if they get caught, what if they know they're not going to get caught? What if you're not in the room? Don't punch your sister because I'll punch you. But what if you're not there? Whack, 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 whack. In other words, how do we bring about justice? Same thing with the education system. What's true education? Do we really understand? Is it this? Or is it based on forcing homework that no one likes, that has been objectively shown not to benefit, to cause harm? Do we do harm through testing and making children sit silently in a room for 8 hours a day and then fear and suffer with homework after? It's for their own good, we say. Well, why? Because they'll get more of it in high school. But isn't that just more injustice? Yes. But it's the way the world is. Bollocks. That's the world you're making. In other words, can you bring about justice and virtue in an unjust and unpious way? What does Meno say? Even if someone provides selves unjustly, would you still call selves virtue and excellence in the same way? Not at all. Thank you. Hooray. So thankfully, Meno says no. No, I don't think. Not even I think that. So someone email Netanyahu and tell him that not even Meno thinks that you can bring about justice through injustice. But what are you going to bring about? Vice? Entirely so. Oh, there you go, Netanyahu. Again, there are lots of people who act this way, and a lot of them seek money and honors, especially in this part of history. And we are learning why, because Meno represents these people and us, and we have been talking about how if what's needed to solve problems is an understanding of the pathologos that we haven't had for 2,500 years, and what's needed for virtue is understanding the logos, which we haven't had for 1,500 years. It's no wonder we're in this situation. So it's not a blame game, it's an understanding game, especially since we just read that everyone is the same in that they seek good. What makes them different is their ability to acquire the good. That's what makes some men better than others. Now we would ask, hang on a second, what if you've been led to believe the bad is good? Then your ability to acquire that would just do you more harm. So we're wondering about that as we go. So, not even Meno. Entirely so, without a doubt. You would be bringing about vice. So you can see the word bad in the word vice here. Kakion. Accordingly then, it is reasonable that either... Okay, this is a quirk of our translator. The word is justice. He translates it as righteousness. Accordingly then, as it is reasonable, justice and sound-mindedness, sophrosun, temperance, or piousness, this is our mysterious virtue, or some other part of virtue. These are all parts. Interesting. We've been talking about whether or not virtue can be learned. Now we've got 3 parts. This is a biggie. Must accompany this provision. If not, it will not be virtue. Fantastic. This is key. If you're not procuring your virtue in a virtuous way while having the parts, justice, sound-mindedness, these are the 2 of the 4 covered in the Republic. Piousness, euthyphro. You can remember that because somebody who wants to be pious is your bro, So you can say you're a bro, Euthyphro. You're a bro if you want to be pious like me. If not, you'll be actually acquiring vice. It will not be virtue, even if through it, even though it provides good things. Even if we punch this definition into Meno's head, it might be doing good. It's not virtue, even if you're providing good things. Right? Makes sense? Let's look at the other things we've mentioned. Gold and silver. Sure, okay, if you think that's virtue, then you're going to steal it. You're going to procure it by siphoning value from other human beings and the working class because you're a capitalist. Is that virtue or is that vice? You're going to procure it by cutting costs, by polluting the environment. You're going to acquire gold and silver through crypto scamming your followers. Even though you might be getting good things, it's not virtue, it's vice. You are harming your soul. Curious. Well, I better pretend that there's no such thing as a soul and a realm of being and an afterlife and reincarnation so I can justify my vice. Anyway, that's a bit of a tangent. Some people do enjoy dismissing philosophy and metaphysics and Socrates because it's handy for that reason. If the cost is to your soul, then just reject soul. It's not going to change the truth, but it can be a belief that can be self-serving. A false belief, anyway. So, justice, temperance, piousness, and some other part of virtue must accompany the provision of good things, otherwise it won't be virtue, but vice. For without these, says Meno, how could there still be virtue? Oh. What's going to happen to our military-industrial complex if we started to reflect in this very simple, very straightforward way? You can't shoot your way to virtue? Interesting. But John Diehard did. Right? Isn't that... Okay, that's a bit of an old reference. What's the other guy? The guy who used to be the Matrix, but now he's the opposite. John Wick. But John Wick became kick-ass and awesome by shooting people he didn't like. Anyway. appears to be, to Meno, again, we just talked about people who are unlikely to listen. They might say, oh, yeah, that appears to be the way you said. In other words, I'm not going to make a conclusion. It's interesting what you're saying. No, not what you're saying, what Logos says. What truth says. Appears to be, not appearance, truth. I don't believe in truth. I think everything is appearance. So I can just make up whatever I want to serve my own philokrimatos, desire for wealth. The importance of learning about the nature of truth, being. Therefore, the way of providing no more than the APORIA of these kinds of things, being at a loss of these kinds of goods, will be virtue. So our definition, to desire good things, everyone desires good things. Okay, to be able to acquire good things. Not just being able to acquire, but the way of being able to acquire those things, no more than being unable, being broke, being stuck, being puzzled. Both is virtue. Being unable to get good things is just as virtuous as being able to get good things, provided you're doing it in a virtuous way. Socrates was poor. Does it make him less of a virtuous person? And yeah, I was going to make a joke about me being poor, but unnecessary. But as it is reasonable, on the one hand, that which comes to be with justice will be virtue. So coming to be self was desire. Coming to be with justice is what is. So to desire things is where we defined as coming to be self. What is a virtuous desire is to come to be self with justice will be virtue. A new definition. On the other hand, that which comes to be without any of these, wow, here we go. That which comes to be without any of these real beings is vice. There we go. That was the other thing that we're highlighting. Not only is it necessary to learn the Meno in our culture, but to be aware of the real beings. The things that we call justice and virtue exist. That's why they're principles. That's why it's not one rule for thee and another rule for me. So currently, the Jewish people, the Israeli people, politicians are saying genocide is bad, except when we do it. That's not a principle. Yes, but it exists in the physical world. Look, over there, isn't it survival of the fittest? It wasn't that genocide was bad, it was that the Germans didn't win. That's not a principle. Principles have to exist in real being. That's what makes them a principle. 2 and 2 isn't 4 because the people who won the war says so. It's always going to be 4. It's something that exists in being. As is soul, mind, let's say, as is mind, as is truth, as is goodness, as is beauty, self-beauty, self-justice. These are the things that we're interested in philosophy. Self-beauty, self-justice. What we're saying here, self-virtue. Self-virtue, here it is, in black and white, and in Greek, and in pink. Where does self-virtue exist? In the real beings. Anyone who says that philosophy is about people's opinions or physical things, or like Meno, fame and money, are screwed up, are wrong, should be at a loss. Because, that which comes to be is virtue, with justice will be virtue, which is a real being. Anything that comes to be without these real beings, not opinions of virtue, like Meno's opinions that it's virtuous to harm people or to keep women in the kitchen, that's not virtue. The real beings. Therefore, it appears to me that it must be necessary, as you say. Even Meno recognizes this. Thus the significance of philosophy. How can you bring about the things you desire without knowing the real beings, including justice and virtue? How can you bring about the things that you desire without with those unless you are learning what they are, having an education that also includes the experience of those, the thing that Meno lacked, the spiritual initiation? How do you study the real beings? That needs to be our education. All of us. That's why we have this channel. Otherwise, it's vice. Now, you could say, well, some people get lucky and it happens to be a fluke that they procure things that they believe are good and actually turns out to be good. And the way that they procure them happens to be in line with the real beings of virtue and justice. But that's a big gamble. And by the way, in the Republic and the Phaedo, Socrates says, if you happen to luck out in that way, you're probably going to be reincarnated as an ant or a bee or some sort of social animal, because that's not learning. You haven't learned anything. So friendly Janet, who lives down the street, who, you know, does what seems to be good things, what seems to be a good way, even if she lucks out, she hasn't learned. She hasn't done what she's here to do. Learned the real beings. That's philosophy. That's the purpose of the dialectic. Learned what is actually good. Again, the dialectic. Use the dialectic to remove her false beliefs if she happens to. Well, she will. Everyone has them, which is midwifery. That's the learning. We ain't machines. All right. So, a new conclusion. That which comes to be with justice will be virtue, but on the other hand, that which comes to be without any of these real beings, vice. Meno says, again, appears. So, a repetition of his appearance. So, maybe that's because he's stuck in the physical world, which you can only see appearances of. But stark contrast, the real beings you can't have appearances of. It's not, they are unopinable because they're from the realm of being. It's in the word. Whereas the physical world of becoming is the world of appearances. Difference between truth. So stark contrast with the actual conclusion and definition we came to with the logos and Meno's level of being able to apprehend it. Appears to be that way. Well, didn't we just say it's not about appearances or about real beings? Yep. So Meno gets a poor grade. Is it not the case then that we said a little while ago that each one of these is a part of virtue, such as justice, temperance, or sound-mindedness, and all such as those? Yes. In that case, Meno, are you playing with me? You playing? You playing with me? Why do you say that, Socrates? Because even though I pleaded with you just now not to break apart nor cut up virtue or excellence, like that joke about when someone breaks a glass at a party, don't break it up. And even though you were given the models, the paradigm, paradigmata, paradigm, according to which you must answer, the dialectic. On the one hand, you failed to pay attention to this, and on the other hand, tell me what virtue is. On the other hand, tell me that virtue is the ability to provide good things along with justice. Then do you say this is part of virtue? So what's virtue? What's his definition? We're not using dialectic, but what's his definition? To be able to provide good things along with justice. So that was our new conclusion. By the way, it's a real being. By the way, being stuck or aporia is also justice, provided you are still functioning justly. In other words, being rich ain't a virtue. It's the ability to procure your good through justice. By the way, this video is free. Just so you know. Just so you know, of course you know, it's free. If you want to donate, then that's good too. Provided you donate justly. Care about your soul most of all. Which isn't a joke, even though I said it like it was a joke. Let's keep reading. Even though you're doing the models, you said that virtue, the paradigm, you didn't use it, and you said that virtue is the ability to provide good things along with justice. Then do you say this is a part of virtue? I do indeed. So not the case then that it results from that which you had agreed upon, that this is virtue, to do whatever one does with a part of virtue. What's virtue? To do whatever with a part of virtue. Yeah, because we said actually not having the good things is virtuous as well. Being APORIA, being stuck, questioned, puzzled, embarrassed, at a loss, uncertain. That's virtue. As much as having good things, provided whatever you're doing, you are doing it with a part of virtue. We don't want a part. So what's the new definition of virtue? Doing anything so long as you're using a part of virtue. All right. So if I said to you, can you define what a bicycle is? Well, it's doing anything so long as you have parts of a bike. What? What's a sandwich? Oh, it's when you eat some of a sandwich. What? It's a terrible definition, Meno. No wonder he says, "You playing with me, boy?" Come on, man. Okay. So, this is virtue. Definition: to do whatever one does with a part of virtue. For you say that justice and each of these are a part of virtue. Why then do I say that you're playing with me? Because of my pleading to tell me about the whole of virtue. And so on the one hand, because of my pleading, why am I saying you're playing with me? Because I'm pleading with you, give me the whole of virtue. Definition, boy. You are far from explaining what self is. By the way, where do definitions lie? In being. So self virtue. So tell me what self is. Whereas on the other hand, makes sense too. Like when I say what is the thing, itself, not how it functions or its reflections. The thing is on its own, itself, self virtue. But you can't see virtue on its own. You can only see virtuous things in the world of things, in the world of appearances. So of course, being must be necessary for principles that we need to rule our souls by, to rule our states by, to rule our race by. That's what it means to be rational and mature. And those principles only exist in being. Therefore, necessary for every living human being, especially those who have charge over others and should be functioning with an art, should be philosophy. Not opinions, real philosophy that allows us to understand and apprehend being. Because to do whatever we want without these real beings is vice. What does vice do? It harms. What do harmed people get? Misery, and they act in crappy ways, mean-spirited ways. So therefore, what's the remedy? A society built around understanding and experiencing and functioning with the real beings. Otherwise, it's vice, which harms and makes misery, perpetuates the cycle from mean-spirited, jerky actions, and so on and so on. So, if you have, if you have a school, do it. If you are a boss, do it. If you own a company, do it. If you're some sort of politician, do it. And if you don't, then do it too, to yourself and your soul. And I'm trying my best to provide these as often as I can, hopefully at least once a day. So every day we can do it. Neat? Yes. Simple? Yes. Only simple because we have gone through the aporia of being confused and puzzled. And practicing philomathesis, which is repetition, review, every day. Which means we had to sacrifice from philokrematos, love of money and fame. And also, we could only see it when we've gone through, we've sacrificed love of money and fame, philokrematos, philosomatos, and philotimos. Sacrifice that. Put our time into philomathesis by reading this every day, and done philosophy, which is the dialectic. And being puzzled every step of the way, aporia. Only then could it have been so simple that it seems so simple when we say it. That's the game. Start puzzled, start many. How do we get to the whole of virtue? We start by seeing the parts. We start by being at a loss. We start by being aporia. Is it a bit embarrassing to be poor? Can be. Do I do it anyway? Well, I was going to say I don't have a choice, but I have a choice, but once you see it, it's not really a choice. It's obvious. Anyway, let's keep going. Let's not make it about me. I mean, that's the example I'm using, so that's what I have. Okay. Therefore, I said, give me the whole, you cut it into parts and said, what's virtue? Doing anything so long as you're using a part of virtue. Therefore, it appears to me you must start again from the beginning. Oh, by the way, that's a thing, isn't it? What do we do at the end of the dialectic? We go back to the start. We apply our conclusion back to the beginning. What do we walk away with? A new definition. What does that new definition become? The new start of the next dialectic. You go back to the beginning. That's ousia, by the way. Ousia in the physical world. Self-reflection, turning back around, reflecting, which is as much ousia as we can get until we get to the realm of being. Because this self-being, where the virtues are, where being is, where justice is its nature is ousia. Its existence is knowing itself. And we apprehend it through the eye of the soul, sometimes called the third eye, which is ousia. It's the sense. It's not a physical sense that sees appearances like Meno. It's that which can apprehend ousia by being ousia. So mind, minding mind, we say. The object, the activity, and the sia are the same. Oneness. But we get there through dialectic, so we can recognize that which is experienced as a oneness. So we can say, oh, there's virtue in that over there. Oh, there's justice over there. Oh, there's being over there. There's beauty over there. Oh, at the top, there seems to be the logos. Things that people who have the experience without the dialectic and this kind of education might miss. Which is important because we need to function with it the way Socrates is. Because what's virtue? Doing whatever we're doing with virtue, with the real beings. So we better understand it and be able to integrate it in whatever we do. The kind of education and nurture that we're here for, says Socrates. Start from the beginning with the same question. What is virtue? If every act performed along with a part of virtue will be virtue, for this is what it means when someone says that every act performed along with justice is virtue. Or does it appear to you that there is no need to start again from the same question? Do you think that anyone can know whatever virtue is if they don't know self? Wow. 2 levels of profundity there, right? If Meno is in the physical world, the lowest version of reflection of self, where you can say, well, what's virtue? Doing things virtuously? He can only point to adjectives, to examples. Appearances. So you can't know whatever virtue is and therefore act virtuously unless you know it as self virtue, which is in being, which is why education isn't sometimes it's called the banking model of education. Our education system is pretty new, based on models that are stupid and proven to be harmful and wrong. And the model that thankfully many educators are learning is bollocks, is the banking one. You're like an empty piggy bank, and education is putting money into you. And then they say, well, that's not actually learning, it actually harms people. Yeah, but it allows them to be a cog in the capitalist system that allows them to be mindlessly exploited by billionaires, make the rich richer while our planet burns and they suffer. Well, that's not a good justification for the banking model of education. Well, here's a different model of education, what Socrates is providing. Self-reflection, ousia, to come to wholes and definitions that exist in being as a path, a doorway to the direct experience of being. That's the mystical experience that Meno missed out on in his crappy education. That we can experience and understand and then function with so we can function justly. Being. Now, there's another level of that. So that's education. And the Phaedo talks about how, by the way, these things we already knew in some way because part of our soul is already there, or we experienced it before we were incarnated into a physical body. Otherwise, if you've never seen beauty itself, how can you recognize it? So therefore, education is a preparation through the logos and dialectic to remember the beings. Nevertheless, there's another level here. How can you think anyone can ever know virtue when they do not know virtue itself, but the word is self? In other words, if even virtue itself in being is one part among many, because you can say maybe justice is a being, maybe temperance is a being, maybe excellence is a being, maybe beauty is a being. Could you really know virtue unless you know what is the whole, which even the beings are aspects or parts or reflections? In other words, if to act virtuously in our physical world, you need to know virtue itself in the realm of being. But even in the realm of being, you can see that there are aspects. Can you really know virtue itself unless you know its cause? In other words, if I gave you if you said define a bicycle and I said handlebars, tires, chains, pedals, these are parts. Can I really understand bike unless I know it as a whole? The whole thing. Is it more than just parts? Because I can just hand you a garbage bag full of the parts. They have to be attached in a certain way as a whole, which can then function on a higher level than a garbage bag full of bike parts. So that's another question that will go way over Meno's head, because he is even struggling with the realm of being, because he says virtue is fame and money. So we know where he is. But for us, that's a question we can take with us, because Socrates is talking to Meno at one level, but on a much more real level, he's talking to us. So, can you know what virtue is without knowing virtue in being, self-virtue? And can you even know self-virtue if you have self-virtue, self-beauty, self-justice, self-temperance? Can you even know virtue without knowing self? Because one thing in common with all of those words is the word self, self-beauty, self-justice, self-being. Altos. In other words, our final quest, or our ultimate quest, the destiny, the inscription above the oracle at Delphi, know thyself. Is that not only our purpose or destiny because it's for everyone, it's destiny of all intelligent beings to know the self. Is it not only our destiny, but necessary for our just actions in this world? Therefore, if you want to be good, if you want to be just, if you want to have virtue and not vice, if you don't want to be miserable and a mean-spirited jerk, passing on your bad daemon, passing on your problems, doing harm that was done to you, keeping the cycle of violence alive, if you want to stop doing any of that and actually become virtuous, become good, and actually seek the good and make it yourself and do it in a good way, a virtuous way, then you have an obligation, you have a duty or a purpose to know self. which is you, which is the twist. It's the most profound, but it's also the most immediate and intimate because it's self. And can you really be virtuous if you don't know self-virtue? Can you really know self-virtue if you don't know self? And that's our goal. Hopefully we get it in this dialogue, even though it's going to be over Meno's head. We can have fun at Meno's expense. That's okay. Socrates has already made some jokes at his expense. It's cool. I'm sure he won't be upset. He's not around anymore. But recognize that we have a part of Meno too. We have to recognize the kakadaemon, the negative self-talk, that if we don't address will be a harm. And if we don't remove that false idea of self, the pathologos, that causes the negative daemon, then we will become like it and become vice and be miserable and pass it on, which is why tomorrow we're going to be reading Philosophical Midwifery. Check out that, which is the removal of the false idea of self causing the negative daemon and the thing that we don't know we're desiring, but is causing us harm, misery, and mean-spiritedness. So we're doing that, while at the same time realizing, well, hey, any freedom we get from that, we need to pour into this, knowing the self. Because how can we actually be good and reach good and be virtuous unless we know what self-virtue is? And how can we know self-virtue unless we know the self, which is the whole of which it's a part? So recognize when we're in Meno, know how to address it the same way Socrates is, while at the same time engaging in that dialectic Socrates is having with us through time. Well, time isn't in the realm of being. Of course he can have a conversation with us through time. That's one of the magic of the part of the magic of the logos. And in this dialogue, we can keep an open question, keep our aporia, our wonder and puzzlement and confusion and embarrassment of not knowing the self, keep that open, and even the embarrassment of keeping the idea of, could Socrates be talking to me? Just little old me, even though he said this 2,500 years ago. That could be embarrassing. Maybe you don't want to tell your friends at the pub that. That's okay. We're keeping that embarrassment. We're okay with that embarrassment. We're okay with that uncertainty. We're okay with being completely puzzled. We're going to hold on to that aporia and that question and puzzle. Could he be trying to help us really know self beyond even virtue? That's what we're going to be carrying. That's what we're going to be okay with. That's what we're going to be okay with being embarrassed and uncertain about. That's what we're going to be puzzled beyond all puzzlement about, leaving us open for maybe a new discovery of self. Sound like fun? Sound interesting? I think so. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you had fun. No, I don't hope you had fun. I hope you actually, no, I do hope it was fun. I hope you were very aporia today and had fun getting aporiatic. And I hope to see you next time. Link to the text for free below. Link to the YouTube and Discord below. Follow on Twitch. Follow and subscribe on YouTube. Join in the live streams if you want. If you join in Discord, you get a notification when we go live. And hey, I hope you have a day full of aporia. And I see you next time.